On this week's edition of the Palace of Pistons podcast, the NBA schedule has finally been released. Where do the Pistons stand? Is their schedule good? Is it bad? What are the strong parts? What are going to be the more difficult parts of the schedule? The Pistons also made a roster move. We talk about the signing of Javonte Green, and we also talk and go down a very, very fun rabbit hole of what former Piston that's still in the NBA would you want to plug into Detroit's 15th and final roster spot. All of that and more on this week's edition of the Palace of Pistons podcast. Let's get it.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another exciting night of NBA basketball.
The Pistons are digging in. They got the depth. They got the big men. They got the better basketball team. No doubt about it.
Pistons need a three, and they have just under 3 seconds to do it. Here's Chauncey Billups. Here it is. He's got it. He's got it. Chauncey Billups hits the three. Overtime. Amazing.
Detroit basketball.
Pistons fans, welcome back to another edition of the Palace of Pistons podcast, brought to you by Believe in the FanDuel Sportsbook. Aaron Johnson and Jasper Apollonia here with you for this week's show. And Jasper, we have made it to that part of the NBA offseason where we are graced with the concept of the future. The NBA schedule was just released a few hours ago prior to us recording this here on Thursday evening. It's like that glorious little glimmer of hope. It's that light at the end of the tunnel that says, hey, basketball is going to be here. Just stick with it. You can do it. Hold on. Look, I don't think we're going to talk about the schedule, and the point of I'm making here is every team is going to play the same number of games. Every team is going to have 41 home games and 41 away games. Like, everyone goes very deep into the schedule, and if you're a fan of one team, you're going to try to point out how unfair your schedule is compared to another team or this or that. We're definitely going to talk about the schedule, but man, am I just glad that it's out, because it's just a reminder of like, hey, this is what we're fighting for every day. This is what you get out of bed for every day. You get one step closer. You're getting one day closer to the start of NBA basketball, to the return of NBA basketball. And man, I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it.
I like the idea of the guy whose like only reason for getting out of bed every day is the release of the NBA schedule. That sounds like
yeah, he's not waiting. He's not trying to get up every day for NBA basketball. He's just trying to get up for the schedule to come out.
Look, to be fair, there's days when the schedule comes out. Even today, I didn't really want to get out of bed, so I fully understand. You might just be talking about me, Aaron, if we're really getting real about it. But yeah, it is exciting. It's nice to see, the Pistons season is starting to come into focus, and it's also a great time for everybody to argue about, how many nationally televised games everybody gets, who deserves it, who's got too many, who's got too few, what even counts as a nationally televised game anymore. Like, I'm one of those people. I don't count the streaming services. Like, to me, Amazon, like Peacock, Amazon Prime, that is not a nationally televised game. If I got to sign up for something else to get it onto my TV, it's not nationally televised. That's how I look at it, at least. But yeah, I mean, hey, look, it's great to have it. And as the NBA schedule comes out, the NFL season is starting to come into focus as well. So lots of stuff to be excited about if you are a Detroit sports fan.
Yeah, it's this time of the year is interesting because, like, for you and I, we're definitely waiting for basketball to come back, but we're also both fans of football. And it's like you get to this part of August where it's like all at once you get that glimmer into the future of the NBA and college basketball. Like, hey, they're going to be back in a few months. But you know what else is starting up in a few weeks is the NFL. And you've had a couple preseason games already. My Twitter feed is all over whatever is going on at the Lions and Miami Dolphins open practice right now, how badly the Lions are beating up on the Dolphins. And this isn't an NFL podcast, but I thought you know what? Since we're really inching closer to the start of the NFL season, and there is definitely a crossover in our listener base of people who are fans of the Detroit Pistons and people who are fans of the Detroit Lions. Our FanDuel Sportsbook prop of the week is this. The Detroit Lions at 10.5 wins. If you bet the over right now, it's plus 110. If you bet the under, it's minus 130. Where are you at with the win total for the Detroit Lions? You going over or under 10.5?
10.5 wins is plus 120?
110.
110. Man, that's really tempting. That's like kind of scary, actually. That's one of those where it's like you're thinking, does Vegas know something I don't? Because boy, they sure seem like a really good contender to win 11 games, especially in a 17-game season. Like 11-6, I feel like you kind of expect that out of this team at this point. I mean, they are in a very, very tough division to be sure, but I don't know, man. JJ McCarthy, it's his first year he's basically a rookie. Caleb Williams, looked good, sure, at times, but wasn't exactly breaking the league last year. And I don't know, with the Packers, Jordan Love is so up and down. I don't know. That's hard to resist at 10.5.
I'm smashing the over. I think this is crazy because if the Lions go over and finish with 11 wins, if they go 11-6, people are going to be freaking out in the streets of Detroit. Like the world just ended and that the sky is falling because the Lions just won 11-6, and it would be a bad thing. This is a team that has a ton of roster continuity, has retained virtually every key piece. And I don't know. I look at their division, and I'm not saying it's horrible, but I will have to wait and see how a Ben Johnson-led, Caleb Williams-led Chicago Bears team looks. I will wait and see and proven wrong if need be on a JJ McCarthy-led Minnesota Viking team. And who is Jordan Love, who, by the way, just underwent a procedure? Who is Jordan Love throwing the ball to in Green Bay? I don't really trust any of their wide receivers. Again, not an NFL podcast here, but I was talking about this line with some buddies the other day, and I just couldn't believe that 11 wins is where Vegas 10-11 wins is where Vegas expects the Detroit Lions to be at. I'd be disappointed if they were only a 10-win team. I think they're definitely better than that, so I'm playing over on this prop.
I mean, losing your coordinators hurts, obviously, but I don't know, man. Aiden Hutchinson's leg got turned into overcooked linguine halfway through the season last year, and they still won 15 games. I don't know, dude. That's hard for me to really, really see. I don't know. They'd have to lose 5 less games. They'd have to lose 5 more games than they did last year. It's hard for me to see. 10-7. That'd be a really disappointing year.
Oh yeah.
Even if I'm one of those people that just believes that the Lions have some sort of voodoo blood curse put on the franchise and they'll never win a Super Bowl. They can still win regular season games. I don't know, man.
Yeah, I think it's a safe overplay there. But for those that do cross over as both Detroit Lions and Detroit Pistons fans that are listening or watching, let us know what you think. Let us know on YouTube. Let us know on Spotify. You can tweet us at Palace of Pistons. Lions going over or under 10.5 wins. Okay, let's move into the NBA schedule talk. It's the Pistons are going to play 82 games this year, believe it or not, right? And they're going to play half their season at home and half their season on the road, and that's really it. But no, we'll break it down because there's stuff to talk about. First things first, what is one thing that every year do fan bases use to slight a schedule and to talk about their team being slighted? That's nationally televised games. And while I understand your point earlier about, only ESPN and NBC should really count as nationally televised games, according to the NBA, when you take into account Peacock and prime streaming services on top of ESPN as well as NBC, the Pistons are going to play 16 nationally televised games this season. 4 games will be on ESPN, and I believe another 2 will be on NBC, with the others also falling on the streaming services, Prime, Peacock, and that kind of stuff. We didn't get NBA TV game announcements, so I don't know if I don't know what's going on there. Maybe those will come out at a later point in time. Let's start here, Jasper. The Pistons open the season on October 22nd. That's a Wednesday. They open against the Chicago Bulls in Chicago. What are your impressions to Detroit's start of the season schedule?
I think it's going to be very telling. It's not like last year. Like last year, coming out of the gate, it was a really, really difficult schedule for Detroit. I think we were like, I see them going 3-7 or something like that. I don't see that happening this year. Yeah, they're opening up on the road at Chicago. Then they're going to Houston. And then they've got Boston, Cleveland, Orlando, Dallas, Memphis, Utah, and Brooklyn. So I'm looking at this and I'm fully expecting the Pistons to go at least 6-4 in their first 10 games. I think anything else would be a little bit concerning. You have to look at Chicago. You have to look at Utah. You have to look at Brooklyn as basically automatic wins. And then you're expecting to win one of those other games in there. Like Dallas should be very winnable. Orlando should be winnable. Boston should be extremely winnable this year. So for me, I'm looking at this opening to the schedule, and I'm seeing a good opportunity for Detroit to put together a solid start at the very least and continue their momentum from last year. If you overperform in those first 10 games, I think you're looking at a really, really promising season because you do have some tests in there. You know, none of those games really are absolute gimmies other than, I would say, Chicago, Boston, Utah, and Brooklyn. Like the other games should be pretty competitive. So I think you're going to learn a lot about this team, and you're going to learn a lot about what they're capable of, where they're going, and how those offseason additions fit into this roster right off the bat, which is really good because last year you felt as if the opposite was true. Like they were just getting hit straight in the mouth right off the bat, and it was going to be very, very difficult for them to settle into things. And we saw that. Like it wasn't until the Philly game where they were able to start putting together any sort of continuity on the defensive end of the floor, where they were able to get their new additions going a little bit. So for me, I think this is a pretty advantageous opening to the season for the Pistons.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think this is a really good opportunity for Detroit to get a little bit of both sides of the spectrum because they're going to come out and they get Chicago, who, quite frankly, they should be a better team than. But then you're also going to get right after that, you get Houston on the road. That's going to be a really good test for them. You know, I think even though Boston is going to take a severe step back, that will still be it should be a good game. And then they get two teams that if the Pistons are serious about taking a legitimate step forward in the conference this year, they get two teams that are expected to finish above them in the standings in Cleveland and Orlando. So I like that they're going to get to see those teams right away, right in the first week of the season to see how they measure up against the supposed top teams in the conference. And then they go into November and they get to kind of bounce back and forth between, hey, this team's expected to be real solid. And, you know, I don't know about Dallas. Dallas will be an interesting case this year. They have a lot of talent, but part of that talent is someone like Cooper Flagg, who is obviously, when the Pistons see them for the first time in this year, is going to be just a week or two into his rookie season. They're going to be without Kyrie Irving still. So, you know, Dallas will still be trying to figure some things out on their end, but they'll still be competitive. And Anthony Davis has lit the Pistons up every time that they've played against him for as long as I can remember. But they kind of bounce back and forth between teams that should be decent to good to then some teams that, hey, if you're a good team, you pounce on these teams, especially early in the season when the legs shouldn't be tired. You should just be able to pounce on these teams that you're clearly better than. This is a Detroit team that has a lot of roster continuity, which I think should very much help them at the start of this season. One thing that I thought about is we go back to last year and you think about, well, not only was their schedule in terms of strength of opponents much more difficult, but that was a roster that had, a lot of new players, a lot of new veterans that were coming in and playing significant roles on top of a new coaching staff that was putting in an entirely new system into the Detroit Pistons organization. So I think they are in a much better position this year to start off on a stronger note than they did last year. And we said it last year, like they were in for a rough start. They were dealt a poor hand in that regard. But this year, there's an opportunity for them to start off better, but also a really good opportunity for them to see where they stack up against a title contending team in Houston and then some of the other top teams in the Eastern Conference in Cleveland and Orlando. So a really good balance for Detroit to start the season. When I look at the schedule and I point out, that stretch looks rough. The first part of the schedule that really stood out to me in that regard is the December. Right before Christmas is when they kick off that annual West Coast road trip. This starts on December 22nd and goes through Christmas all the way up to when it ends on December 30th against the Los Angeles Lakers. And it's always tough for the Pistons to go out on the West Coast for that extended road trip. But for it to happen right at the Christmas holiday, just a really bad time of the year for it to take place for Detroit. When I looked at the schedule, that was the immediate part of the schedule that stood out to me. Like, ooh, that is rough.
Yeah, and Aaron, even to add on to that, like you come back from that road trip and you get Miami at home, which definitely you should win. But then you get Cleveland, New York, you get Chicago, then you get LA and Phoenix. So, you have two easy games in there in Chicago and Miami, but you also have four very difficult games against those other teams as well. So, yeah, that's definitely an extended stretch that you could see the Pistons slipping up on. I think it's important to note, though, that the schedule overall, to me, looks easier than it did last year in terms of the way that things are spaced out. The Pistons have, to my count, a couple less back-to-backs this year. I mean, it's only a couple less, but it is something. They only have one extended West Coast road trip as well. Last year, they had two. The one you mentioned in December, that's the only time they're going out west for more than 3 games in a row. And I think that definitely enters into the equation for you as well. The other time they're going to do it at the end of January, they're going to Denver, Phoenix, and Golden State from the 27th to the 30th. That Phoenix Golden State is a back-to-back. So, I mean, there are definitely going to be bumps in the road. There are going to be tough stretches. But overall, looking at this schedule, I think it's far more forgiving than the last couple seasons have been. If you remember 2 years ago, they finished their last 10 games. I think 8 of them came on the road, something like that. You look at the end of this schedule as well, and it's not easy. It's never going to be easy, but it's a lot more forgiving. You get New Orleans, then you get Minnesota, OKC, tough games. But then you get Toronto at home, Minnesota at home, you get Philly, you're at Orlando, which should be tough, but then you get Milwaukee, Charlotte, and Indiana, and those should all be winnable games for this team. So I think you also have an opportunity to get through your difficult stretch in the middle of the season, and have the potential to have a little bit of momentum going into the playoffs as well. So overall, I'm looking at this schedule, and this is one of the first times in the last couple of years where I can look at it and I'm not going whew, schedule makers really had it out for Detroit this year. It feels pretty balanced to my eyes. I don't know if you feel the same way, Aaron.
I think it is somewhat balanced. I think outside of that West Coast road trip in December, I think the other part of the schedule that stands out to me is like that's going to be a difficult portion of the season is their March. They play 5 back-to-backs in March. You're coming up towards the end of the season, and that you can imagine that will not be good for their legs. But you look at 5 back-to-backs in March on top of how many of those games are on the road. They play, I think it's 10 of 18 on the road. Granted, some of the opponents in March, it is again rather evenly distributed where it doesn't look like they're going to be playing all of the elite competition in March. It might be tough in terms of the travel and the amount of games, but the level of competition, from expected good teams to expected bad teams, it's pretty evenly distributed. I actually looked at the schedule as well in January, and I think January sets up to be a really nice month for Detroit because once they do get off that brutal West Coast road trip at the end of 2025, they open up 2026 with, 6 of 7 at home, as well as 4 days off in the middle of a 6-game homestand. So that's going to be a really good opportunity for Detroit to get their feet back under them, to get comfortable. They're only going to play 5 road games in January, and then they only play 4 road games in February. So they've got a chance in those 2 months to kind of resettle themselves, hopefully stack some wins for, again, what I think will be a challenging March just from the standpoint of the number of games they're playing and the amount of travel they're going to be doing in those games. But no, I didn't come away from this schedule feeling like, oh, the Pistons got slighted here. I mean, they play 14 back-to-backs. That is the number that most teams in the league play this year. Most teams play 14, but there are some that play 15. There are some that play 16, and then there are a handful that play 13. So it's not like they got gypped and are playing an obscene number of back-to-backs either. This checks out to me as a pretty balanced schedule. There are always going to be portions of the year that you think are super challenging and others that you view as an opportunity for the team to have a good stretch. But this is what it is for Detroit. I'm not sitting here feeling like they just got the short end of the stick from the league office.
Yeah, and I think anytime that there's a little bit of a tough thing going on, they get a little bit of relief afterwards. Like we mentioned the first 10 games of the season, it should be a good showing for Detroit, a good test of where they are. But the nice thing about this schedule is even if they don't come out of the gate looking as good as you'd like them to look, well, their next 5 games are against Philadelphia, Washington, Chicago, Philly again, and Indiana, with all but the first Philly game coming at home. And I think that's if you open up and it's a little disappointing, let's say you go 4-6 to start the season, you're like, damn, all right, shoot, that's not great. Well, you have 5 extremely winnable games right after that. So you can have a good get right stretch, even if it does take you a little bit of time to get your sea legs underneath you. So I'm looking at this schedule and I feel pretty good about what the Pistons got. And then you add in the fact that, they've gotten more nationally televised games this year than I think they have the last probably 4 or 5 years combined.
Right.
I mean, honestly, I should have done the math before I came in the show. I mean, if you're only counting the NBC, ESPN ones, they haven't gotten more than 2 of those. Yeah, it's got to be at least the last 3 or 4 years combined. It's got to be at least 4 years combined. So that's a great sign for, where Detroit is going and how their profile is raising as well. Speaking of those nationally televised games, you are at Atlanta on November 18th on NBC. They're at Boston on ESPN on the 26th of November. They're back on NBC on the 19th against Boston again. February 27th, you are playing Cleveland at home on ESPN. You're playing Atlanta at home on ESPN on March 25th. And then lastly, your third to last game, you have Milwaukee at home on April 8th on ESPN as well. So those should be fun, competitive games. I really wish they didn't get Boston twice. I don't really know why they did that. Same with Atlanta. Boston getting 25 nationally televised games overall is just insane to me. Golden State getting 34 is even crazier.
How about this? How about the fact that the Pistons are in the top half of the league in nationally televised games for next season? They're 14th with 16. And that being said, they have more nationally televised games than the Atlanta Hawks, who only have 13, and the Orlando Magic, who only have 14. And when you talk to people and hear about where people think the Eastern Conference lays out, those are two teams that people think could finish ahead of Detroit in the standings. So they're definitely on a national level. The league is aware of the Detroit Pistons now, and they're very high on this team's potential and obviously the marketability of a young star like Cade Cunningham.
Yeah, no question. And I think, again, if this season goes the way that you are wanting it to, that you're expecting it to as a Pistons fan, that's only going to increase next year as well. So, yeah, I think this is a really good sign of what Detroit is doing in terms of raising their national profile. I think it speaks to what they did last year, and it'll be really interesting to see how they can perform in those games, because the last couple of years it was just like you only get a couple bites of the apple. You got to really make them count. And if you got blown out in one of those games, boy, it was really going to sour people's perception of you.
Right.
Now you get a chance to really show what you're about against some quality opponents. And frankly, hopefully you're going to beat up on Boston twice. And that is nice as well. So,
okay, let's move on past the schedule talk into the Pistons actually making a roster move. We talked last week on the podcast about the Pistons still having 2 open roster spots available. And since they have filled one of those spots, courtesy of Javonte Green. He is a 6'4" wing that spent last season with both the New Orleans Pelicans and the Cleveland Cavaliers. He's 32 years old with career averages of 5.3 points and 3.1 rebounds per game. He is a sub 34% three-point shooter. Jasper, I know you liked this signing as a depth add for the Detroit Pistons. Enlighten the people on what they're getting in Javonte Green.
I'm fine with this move. I don't want to oversell it. For me, this is exactly what he was signed at, which is 13th, 14th, 15th man. I'm not expecting a whole ton out of Javonte Green this year. He had some nice moments with Chicago. The last 3-ish seasons. He got hurt in 23-24. So it doesn't really count, but 2021, 22, Javonte Green, 22, 23 was a solid enough player for Chicago. And I think if you're looking at him as a very much breaking case of emergency wing, sure, fine. Decent defender. Yeah, I wouldn't expect too much out of this, though, to be honest with you, Aaron. I just thought it was important for us to touch on it a little bit. But yeah, I'm not expecting a lot out of Javonte Green. I think for me, the bigger thing is, Amir Coffey was signed by the Milwaukee Bucks today. That's another guy that we mentioned a couple weeks ago as somebody that we really liked and we wanted the Pistons to take a look at. Clearly, though, the Bucks can offer him a bigger role than the Pistons can right now. And it does seem pretty clear to me that Detroit at this point is more interested in maintaining flexibility than they are in adding potential pieces in the free agency market. So,
yeah, I poured a cup of coffee out earlier after the Shams tweet came out that Amir Coffey was headed to Milwaukee. I ever since you mentioned him as a target for Detroit, what was it, a month or so ago? It's just, he's really stood out to me as I can't believe this guy is still unsigned, and we're 2 weeks into August. I wrote about him on Wednesday on Palace of Pistons.com, our free Substack that you should absolutely go subscribe to. The link to our website is in our show notes, whether you're watching or listening to it, wherever you're watching or listening to it from. But I wrote about him still as a guy that I really thought the Pistons should be trying to bring in a 41% 3-point shooter last year, can score, can do a little bit of creating, not a ton, but a little bit, and is a solid defender with good size at 6'7". I was just absolutely stunned that he was still available. And, I would have, quite frankly, I would have much rather had Amir Coffey than Javonte Green, but he's with a Milwaukee team that A, he's probably going to have a greater opportunity with, and B, a Milwaukee team that I think is quietly adjusted on the fly rather well this summer after making the decision to waive Damian Lillard and just eat that as a loss. They bring in Miles Turner, and they've brought in a bunch of good role players. They weren't going to be able to bring in a star, but they've done a really good job surrounding Giannis with more overall talent. And the Amir Coffey signing is just another example of that. And you think, Milwaukee is another team in the division. I'm not saying that Amir Coffey flips the table for them and they're all of a sudden better for the Detroit Pistons, but just a good move for them. And this was someone that I really was liking as a guy for Detroit with 2 open roster spots at the time. But no, I can't sit here and say that I have nearly as many thoughts on Javonte Green as I did Amir Coffey. If Javonte Green is playing a heavy dose of minutes for Detroit at any point this year, that isn't like April if Detroit has the schedule kind of wrapped up and their playoff positioning wrapped up, then that means things probably went pretty poorly. Yes, he can play defense, but he's 6'4". I know he can defend. I know he can even guard some fours, but this wasn't a signing that really excited me. I think that if they were going to add in that area, they needed to get some more size. They needed to get some more shooting, and this kind of goes against both those ideologies. I'm not saying this is a horrid signing. I don't really think, signing a 14th or 15th man can be an end of the world signing like that. But it is what it is. This is your 14th, 15th guy, and his role should be rather marginal. Otherwise, it means bad things happened.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even be surprised to see him cut before the season starts. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if that happens. I mean, I will say this. I'll give the Bucks a little bit of credit. Like, I'll add on to that. Say what you will about their ability to surround Giannis with another star, but like last 3 seasons, they've made some like sneaky good shooter, like vet minimum signings. Like they signed Coffey last year. They got Gary Trent for like $2.5 million, and the year before that, they got Malik Beasley for nothing. So like they've actually done a decent job in that regard, even if the end product hasn't necessarily been what you expect when you have a player of Giannis's caliber on your roster.
The thing that hurts them the most is that they have like they've kept Kyle Kuzma ever since bringing him in. Like they should have done whatever they could to just offboard him. But look, I just look at some of the like around the needle, or that's not the terminology, but like lower end moves that they've made, and it's they brought back Gary Trent Jr. this summer on what was a very team-friendly deal. They brought back Ryan Rollins, who I thought had a really nice season last year with Milwaukee. When he finally got the opportunity to play and get on the court, he looked really good. I like the Miles Turner signing for them, right? They let Brook Lopez, who's much older, who is clearly trending in the wrong direction in terms of his level of play. They replace him with a much better Miles Turner. And then they go out and they get Amir Coffey. Like they bring in Cole Anthony. They benefit from him getting bought out by Memphis. They bring him in. They've just added these depth pieces that make that roster function a little bit better. And it should kind of open things up for Giannis because they're really buying into putting a ton of shooting around him. They keep that defensive interior guy in Miles Turner there, but on offense, he's able to step out and hit outside shots. I really like how they've kind of adapted this year. They've had this offseason, they've had a really, really solid summer.
End of the day, I still think they're mids. Like I think Detroit should be better than they are this year, but we will see. We will see.
Like,
speaking of
like,
Chris,
are they absolutely better than Detroit or worse than Detroit though? Like,
not absolutely. I mean, you have Giannis on your team.
Like, is there a world where Milwaukee finishes above Detroit?
For sure. You have Giannis Antetokounmpo. Like, yeah, for sure. Somebody could step up. I don't know. I mean, I just think they're mids. Like, that's all I have to say about Milwaukee right now. I think they're mids until proven otherwise. So that, I got to see it. I got to see how that roster comes together. Okay. I mean, it's kind of like how Detroit was last year, right? Like they brought in these guys. Like we both liked the idea of all the players they brought in, but we're like, you're a 30-win team until you're not. Like that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, fair. Vegas agrees. I mean, Vegas has the Pistons at plus 1,300 to win the conference. Or this is FanDuel Sportsbook, mind you. FanDuel Sportsbook says the Pistons at plus 1,300 to win the Eastern Conference. They have Milwaukee behind at plus 1,700. So the Pistons do still have one roster spot left. And I thought for the fun of it, let's play a little bit of a game. Take out all the additional factors like the contract, for example. But if you could go and with this 15th roster spot and add any former Detroit Piston that is still an active player in the NBA and is contracted by another team, if you could go in, take them from that team, and place them on the Detroit Pistons roster, who would you pick? I went between a couple different guys, but I want to hear on who you landed on.
Well, Aaron, you say a couple different guys, and you're not exaggerating when you say that. There's only like four dudes who you could reasonably take here, especially when you like add the caveat they still have to be in the NBA. Like, oh my God, it's real tough right now. I had to go ultimately, and the name I'm going to say is really going to hammer home how sparse the pickings are for former Pistons that you'd actually want on this year's team. I ended up going with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. And look, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope did not have a good 24-25 season for the Orlando Magic. He signed a big contract for him, went out there and kind of stunk up the joint. Averaged fewer than 9 points a game, shot 34% from three, 43% overall, was not as impactful defensively as he has been in the past. But I just thought for me, like, overall, when you look at the track record, he is 32 years old now. Like, he's still in a time in his career where he should be athletically a serviceable enough player for you. We saw how good he was as well the previous two seasons when playing with an elite shot creator in Nikola Jokic. Over 40% from three with Denver, like an absolutely key part in their championship run. They needed him for that championship run to happen. Period. So when I look at how Orlando's season played out last year, they had a lot of injuries to Paolo. You had injuries to Franz Wagner. It has been said time and time again, like the issues they've had in finding a guard that is like a true playmaker. So I think for me, when you look at his last season, I can hand wave away a little bit of that and just say, it was a bad situation. Just didn't quite work out that year. But I think if you give him a Cade Cunningham, I think that is a relationship that could work extremely well. We've said the Pistons' perimeter defense is definitely a bit of a weak point for them this year. You're still not sure what you're getting out of Jaden Ivey on that end of the floor. I think if you can have a KCP come in there, really shore up things, still it's a 6'6", 6'7" guy. Like, he can slide between positions. He can give you shooting. And I think if you have Cade Cunningham, you'd see that 3-point percentage go closer to what you expect from him, which is something in that like 38 to 40% mark. So if I had to pick one guy, it would be Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. I just see a fit for him on this roster. Yes, you brought in Duncan Robinson, but when you look at KCP, I think he still gives you some shooting while giving you a much better defensive output than Duncan Robinson does. So I would just like to see him as, I value versatile rosters. And we've said this, like, especially when it comes to the playoffs, your defense is only as good as your weakest link. Having somebody like KCP in certain situations, like, wow, man, if you could throw out a Cade, KCP, Asar Thompson, Ron Holland, and like Isaiah Stewart 5, holy hell, that sounds like a nightmare to deal with if you are an opposing team. So that would be the guy I would take.
All these years later, and all Jasper wants to still do is hashtag pay KCP.
Pay that man his money.
That's a cut for those people that didn't start watching the Pistons last year. No, I think that's a good pick. I thought about KCP, and like you said, when you look at the qualifications for this, there's really only 4, maybe 5 guys that are still in the NBA, that are still on an NBA team that you like want to even discuss putting on this Pistons roster. Really just a testament to how bad this organization has been for the last number of years. I mean, it's half of the guys, if not more, that were on their roster, let's say under the Monty Williams season, they're not even in the NBA anymore. So just a testament to how bad the situation was. But I deliberated between 2 other guys outside of KCP, and it came down to me with either Chris Middleton or Bruce Brown. And as much as I wanted to talk myself into Chris Middleton and tell myself, oh, you put him in a much more marginalized role, you ask him to hit some outside shots, do a little bit of secondary creating, which he can certainly do. The concern for me with Chris Middleton is something that's hindered him for at least the last 3 seasons is, can he stay on the court? That's been a major, major problem for him. And maybe there were some other factors in Milwaukee that played a role in him kind of falling apart towards the end of his time there. It certainly at least seemed that way from the outside looking in. But the other guy that I ultimately landed on was Bruce Brown. Much like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope playing a key role on that Nikola Jokic-led NBA championship Denver Nuggets team, Bruce Brown was a pivotal piece for them as well. And again, matching with that versatility that you talked about, Bruce Brown would sure as heck offer some of that versatility as well. This is a guy that can play some point guard for you, can do some creating, but can also play on the wing as a 2 or a 3. We know he can defend. He can get to the rim. He also kind of matches that, like, doesn't take crap kind of attitude that would really match with the Detroit Pistons. I think he would be an easy vibes fit with this roster. I mean, I believe he has some crossover with like Isaiah Stewart. They spent 1 year together, did they not? In Isaiah Stewart's rookie season,
they did not, because that was the first move of the Troy Weaver era.
Oh, that's right.
Was that blockbuster trade with the Brooklyn Nets?
Or was it
Zan
Musa? Yeah. So, okay, but he would still fit the vibes of this roster as a no-nonsense kind of, we'll talk crap, we'll get in your face, we'll stand up for his guys kind of guy. I think at 28 years old, he's obviously still got a lot to give, and if there were a way to put him on this roster right now, I would do it. Obviously, the Denver Nuggets certainly missed him because they brought him back this offseason after he left them for a big payday in Indiana after winning the title with Denver. But it's funny because outside of Chris Middleton, Bruce Brown, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, maybe you throw Luke Kennard in there as well.
Yep.
It's like, who else could you really consider for this? Who are your
Andre Drummond?
Are your honorable mentions like Andre Drummond, Spencer Dinwiddie, and Alec Burks?
Yeah. Oh my God. Oh Lord. Yeah, I mean, God, I wouldn't want Dinwiddie at this point in his career. Like, I don't see the fit on this roster at all. I don't. I mean, the thing with Middleton and Bruce Brown for me is like Bruce Brown can't shoot. Like, he still can't shoot. He looked like he's not looked good outside of Denver the last couple of years. And
hey, the choices were not great.
No, I mean Chris Middleton, like to your point, he's only played what 125 out of a possible 246 games the last 3 years. So like he's hurt all the time. I thought he looked super washed in Washington. No pun intended. Yeah, man, it's just ugly. Like, I wasn't going with KCP because I was like, oh, buddy, they need KCP.
Yeah.
This was a process of elimination. My God, how the last decade has gone for this team.
The only guys left really are like Marvin Bagley and Luka Garza that haven't been named. I mean, DeLon Wright, like this is the pool you're picking from. The choices were very, very slim. Is Kevin Knox employed? Is he on an NBA team? I guess.
Is he still on the Trailblazers or something?
Could you count Quentin Grimes? I mean, he played, 6 actual games for the Pistons. Does he count for this exercise?
I don't know. I mean, I guess the reason I wouldn't pick Quentin Grimes is because he doesn't want to play for the Detroit Pistons. Like, genuinely. I guess if you're just saying, like, okay, you're just looking at it from statistical output, yes, Quentin Grimes would be the guy you would pick because he did look good with Philly and with Dallas last year. Like, he absolutely did. He's the youngest one of those players as well. But, like, if you're taking into account the fact that he forced his way out of Detroit last year, from everything we have heard, no, I wouldn't take Quentin Grimes. Like, he wouldn't want to play for this team. He didn't. He very clearly did not. So, yeah, I guess I mean, 6 games, does that really count?
I think back to all of the different thought exercises that we've done on this podcast over the years, and this one was up there for the most challenging. This was gritty stuff coming out of here with an answer. I need to know, after spending the time that I did determining who I would pick, I need to know, for those of you that are watching and listening, who would you pick? Any James Wiseman truthers still out there? Let me hear you. I certainly heard you when the Pistons acquired him at the trade deadline a few years ago. Let me hear you now, if you're still out there. This was a brutal exercise on the mind. All right.
Yeah, I mean, no, we straight up forgot about Quentin Grimes. That's how little he's done. He hasn't even signed a contract. I was looking at this. He hasn't signed a contract yet.
He's one of the 4 or 5 restricted free agents. It's like him. Cam Thomas is still figuring things out. Jonathan Kuminga. Like, there's 3 or 4 RFAs that are still out there that you just any day now, if you guys could make a decision, that would be cool. But yeah, I didn't really want to pick Quentin Grimes because he played 6 games for the Pistons, and I don't think he enjoyed a second of his time.
In all fairness, I also did not enjoy a single minute of his time in Detroit. So, I mean, that's how I feel about it. At least KCP gave us that dunk in the playoffs against the Cavs. You know what I mean?
That play is entrenched in my. I'm pretty sure I tweet that video, that dunk annually at this point.
Up until this last season, that was the greatest moments of Detroit Pistons basketball circa 2008 to 2024.
What a sad.
There's not even what's even a close second? The time that Jason Maxiell had that sick block on Tyson Chandler. Or the
ball against Philadelphia.
Or I was going to say the other, let's see, it's that. There's Sadiq Bey's 50 ball against the Magic.
No, stop.
There's beating the 70.
Say that, then you've got to bring up Malachi Flynn.
There's beating the 73 win Warriors on Ben Wallace retirement night.
Yep.
those are the greatest moments of like of 16 years of Pistons basketball. That's all we had, man.
Gosh. Thank God things look like they're trending in the better direction finally, because my goodness, I don't want to look back at my life and think about how much of my youth was spent absorbing horrid Detroit Piston basketball. It's not going to be something I look back at fondly.
It's not great. But you know what, Aaron? I'm so glad we started with the schedule, because as we're wrapping up this podcast, it's important to remember that's all in the past. We have a new era of Pistons basketball to look forward to and a real reason to be excited. And that is, when is the last time we said, I don't think we've ever said that on this podcast before, to be honest with you.
Oh, we forgot a big name. Jeremy Grant.
Oh my God. How do we forget Jeremy Grant? Yeah, actually, no. Oh, okay, great.
That's the answer. Shoot.
All right. Well, I'm glad we completely screwed up the last 10 minutes of this thing. 100%. It's Jeremy Grant. It's got to be Jeremy Grant.
Take the contract out of it. That would be the biggest hole off on Jeremy Grant, would be the massive contract that he has. If you take the contract out of the situation, he's exactly what Detroit needs.
I think, yeah. I mean, you're bringing him off the bench, right?
I would think so. He doesn't start over Asar Thompson. I don't think he starts over Tobias Harris.
Yeah. I mean, shoot.
Unless
again, another guy who's just hurt all the time.
To go like Cade, Asar, Tobias, Jeremy Grant, Jalen Duren.
Oh my God, dude. Jeremy Grant was
like
so bad last year. I forgot how terrible he was last year. I don't know, man. Dude, 37% from the floor.
Yeah.
Overall. Oh my God.
He was in like I just want to shoot the ball mode last year.
I mean, can you blame him?
It was a little rough that we did that whole segment and didn't bring him up. And I definitely thought about him at one point. And maybe that's when I texted you and Mike a few days ago about the topic. Maybe that's when he came to my mind, and I just forgot about him ever since. That's a miss by me.
I don't know. I'm thinking about it. I'm like, oh my God, if he's like what he was last year, if him and KCP are like the equivalents of are the put up like similar production to what they did last year for this team, frankly, I think I'd still probably take KCP. Jeremy was, oh my God, he was so bad last year.
He was bad last year, but we've seen what a good Jeremy Grant looks like, and that's a gettable player. You can get him in a smaller role. Last year, he was just in get me out of this hell mode. I'm just going to play so bad that they decide to shut me down for the year, which, I mean, he kind of did that in Detroit as well. It's just he actually wasn't really playing bad in Detroit. The Pistons just were always bad enough to shut him down anyway. It's crazy when you look at Jeremy Grant's game log. If you go back to his first year in Detroit, 54 games, 47 games. Then he did play 63 in his first season with Portland, but then 54, and then last year 47. He is like the epitome of stuck on a crappy team, but too good to play on said crappy team. So he gets shut down for various different injuries throughout the year.
Yeah. Oh God. I can't believe we forgot Jeremy Grant. Yeah.
This is why it's so important that we save this topic for last. Because had we started with this, we would have fallen completely off the rails, and I don't know if we would have ever gotten to the schedule. I think we would have just kept thinking of different players and kept going down different narratives to figure out an answer. Like, who else is out there? Like, I got to think of some, like, I mean, is there a world where Corey Joseph, you bring him back, you need a third point guard.
Oh my God. Oh God. All right. Time to wrap this thing up. We're talking about Corey Joseph, Aaron. That's how you know things have really gone off the rails.
Mike missed a good one this week. Yeah. For everyone's sanity, let's wrap this one up. This is what happens when you put me in charge of hosting. Things go off the rail. They go off the rail quick. All right. Let me do my post-show plugs before we go. For those of you that are still here, and it's probably a pretty small number at this point, I imagine that the last few stragglers clicked off when I said the word Corey, and that's understandable. But if you're still here, that means you like us. or you really, really hate us. Either way, you're listening, you're watching. And if you're one of the people, and there's a lot of them out there that are watching or listening every week, but aren't subscribed to the show on YouTube, that aren't following the show on Spotify, what are you doing? What are you doing? Go take the 5 seconds and the 2-3 clicks that's needed to go in and follow, to go in and subscribe, to go in and like the video, to leave a 5-star rating. Go leave a comment on what we talked about today, right? Just support the show because it allows us to continue to do the show and continue to do bigger things with the show. Get the access that we've gotten, get some of the guests that we've had in recent years and want to continue to do more of. So please, before you go, whatever you do, go subscribe, go follow, leave us that comment, help us spread the word a little bit more. We greatly appreciate it. And before I give Jasper an opportunity to derail us anymore, or myself the opportunity to derail us any further, I am going to wrap this up. So for my co-host, Jasper Apollonia, I am Aaron Johnson. Thanks so much for watching and listening to this week's edition of the Palace of Pistons podcast, brought to you by Believe in the FanDuel Sportsbook. We will see you all next time.